Not exactly terrifying for me, but around 12 years ago I was sleeping in my bed, which was in front of my mirror closet doors. I woke up suddenly with a jolt of energy coursing through my body. I stretched my arms and felt something staring at me to my left between my dresser and a little night table. Saw nothing there. Then my gaze drifted to the mirrors and there was a small figure standing there. Its head wasn't turned toward the closer mirror at the time. My eyes went back to the spot between the table and dresser, and then went back to the mirror. Repeated that same movement one more time to be sure I wasn't just seeing things. Then my sight locked toward the mirror that somehow reflected the image of this child standing right beside my bed. And I just said, "Well, hello there." Just as I said my greeting, its head turned toward the mirror and looked right at me. I said, interesting. Soon after blinking a few times, it disappeared. Needless to say, it added more to my curiosity toward the non-physical aspects of existence.
Long comment, so I apologize. But this experience is so similar to one I had in a hotel minus the mirror or the speaking. I was in a Vegas hotel. I don't remember which, but I remember distinctly that it was room 317. Because that is exactly the time of the night that I woke urgently up, feeling like I missed my alarm and needed to get up. My eyes were drawn directly to the digital clock reading 3:17 a.m. Then, there was the strangest sensation of my eyes being literally tugged to the left, like with a string. At the foot of my parents' hotel bed in the most black corner of the room was the perfectly cut-out silhouette of a man with his hoodie up. The shape had precise edges, but no details within it whatsoever. I remember the color of the silhouette very vividly, because it can only be described as when you push on your eye and you see a moving rainbow behind your eyelids. I kept looking outside the perfect cutout shape at the black, around it and back again multiple times to try to understand what the fuck I was looking at, which is why I remember all of this. He was standing with his hands in his hoodie pocket, staring down at my parents. He didn't say anything, but I for some reason got the feeling that I knew that was his bed. Immediately I thought it was a hypnagogic hallucination. So I turned around the room and tried to imagine more of these figures around me to test the theory, which usually works for me. I couldn't. He was gone by the time I looked back. I wasn't even scared at first. I was just so surprised at the entire experience and frankly a little excited because 14-year-old me was skeptical, but in love with paranormal stories. I woke my dad up and said I saw a man in the hotel room. He said I was dreaming. Got fed up and stood in the spot I said and asked if I could see him. I said no. He reiterated, I dreamt it. I said it was a ghost. He still insisted I dreamt it, but asked if I'd like for him to move to my bed. I felt silly about accepting, but I did, because retroactively it was starting to freak me out that there was a man in the room with us. So my mom is alone in the other bed. After about a half hour of thinking and listening to her shift around more than she should, she got up frustratedly and forced her way onto our bed next to me. My mom, who has an endless number of personal experiences herself, whispered, not scared but annoyed. It was trying to yank me off the bed. Chills.
I have one too. Apologies, as I'm a skeptic, and there wouldn't be any urges and weird feelings in mine. I woke up and saw a man in a hat in my computer chair. I was around 15, give or take. He was sitting with legs crossed and dressed kinda like a detective in a very formal hat. Silhouette looked exactly like that from a noir movie. I wanted to scream as I got scared af, but couldn't as the fear was surreal and I froze dead. Now in this state I am 50-50. The man said something like, I'm a maker, and then I fell asleep for several seconds despite being full of adrenaline. When I woke up I saw the shadow, but I knew it was lifeless, and of course it was just some clothes that seemed like a man. I didn't believe it was. At that moment I knew that caught someone or something who didn't plan on it, and it didn't feel like that they were up to something bad. But the odds of that happening were very, very small, and that was once-in-a-lifetime event. I fell asleep without even checking my room, disappointed, realizing it was my only real paranormal experience, that I cannot prove, and that could have easily been my imagination dream. Never told anyone about it. My working theory, besides a dream, illusion, imagination, would be a simulation programmer, or future me, or somebody interested in my life.
The year was 1986 in North Alabama, and I was 6 at the time. I shared a room with my brother at the time. He's 10 years older than me and gone to football practice at the time. The time was around 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and my parents were arguing in the living room. I was sitting on the bed. I saw a hand in the corner of the big mirror we had sitting on top of the dresser drawer in our room. The hand kept waving at me, and I looked around as if I was imagining this, but no, it was real. So after some waving, it stopped and descended in the mirror. so I thought my brother was pranking me, so I looked behind the dresser and no one was back there. I sat back on the bed terrified, and the hand came back and motioned for me to come closer to the mirror. I freaked out and ran to my parents and told them what was happening. They came to our room, looked around, and you guessed it, Han. They asked where my brother was and remembered he was at football practice. My dad looked all through the room and found nothing, and the hand never showed back up in the mirror again. I moved this mirror with me to another city and came back. Now the mirror is in storage, and the hand never came back. Funny disclaimer too, why the memory is so vivid is the hand was Caucasian and we're black. A white family stayed there from the 1920s through 1969 when my dad bought the house through a GI Bill. He was a Vietnam vet.
I worked as an RA in Poling Hall, and after a few months of living there, and always feeling a bit off like someone else was there, I learned that in 1972, Nancy Wyckoff was stabbed to death on the 3rd floor, my floor.
I haven't found anything to back up what one of my co-workers explained when we spoke about it.
But they told me about how Callahan and Poling have the same setup. But Callahan's dorm numbers count along the perimeter of the hall, while Poling's do a figure 8, where one wing has its numbers mirrored where they should be. This was due to fraternity students using Nancy's dorm to haze new students. The numbers were changed, so they were less likely to know the correct room. If that were true, then my dorm room would have been hers. I wish I could find the article I saw back in 2018 with her dorm number, but I've had no luck. There were a few times living there where I felt like someone else was there too, and I'd talk out loud to her to soothe myself a bit.
Rented a house in South Hill with some buddies for a year, and there were these weird DIY carpeted rooms in the basement with really short ceilings, so you would have to squat uncomfortably or crank your head sideways to walk through them. One of the first days after I moved in, I met the next-door neighbor, who told me the previous owner was very spiritual and was also a serial abuser to his wife and child. She said he put the carpet down in the rooms with low ceilings because it would remind his family to pray every time they had to bend over to walk through the room. She also mentioned that she had to call the cops for noise complaints multiple times because she would hear the family singing gospels or the father yelling something at the rest of his family at 2 a.m. Apparently, the guy had a job with the police department, and the wife had no living family, so the abuse went on for years until they all just left one day. She said they didn't take anything out of the house, and then 8 months later it was for sale. After hearing that, I decided the basement wasn't really that important for me to use, so I avoided it as much as possible. However, when I did have to go down there, it never felt empty. I always felt like I had someone judging me, and the constant thought of praying for forgiveness in those forsaken rooms never left my mind. I ended up moving all of my outdoor gear into my room to the dismay of my girlfriend. But I'd rather have a kayak and mountain bike taking up precious legroom than be forced to brave the basement where God can judge you harshly.